who is equally luminous, powerful and opulent. Let me worship that Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda. Purport. This is a quotation from the Brahma Samhita, 546. Next verse, 317. Oh, you will see. Brahma Shiva Agyakari Bhakta Avatar Palanarthi Vishnu Krishna Surupakar. The conclusion is that Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva are simply devotee incarnations who carry out orders. However, Lord Vishnu, the maintainer, is the personal feature of Lord Krishna. Surajami tanniyukto hang haro harati tadvasharaha vishvam purusha rupena paripati tri shakti drik. Lord Brahma said, I am engaged by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to create. Following his orders, Lord Shiva dissolves everything. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, in his form of Shiradakshay Vishnu, maintains all the affairs of material nature. Thus, the supreme controller of the three modes of material nature is Lord Vishnu. Purport. This is a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam 2.6.32. Lord Brahma gave this information to Devarashi Narada when he was receiving instructions from Lord Brahma to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Paramatma. After describing the universal form of the Lord, Lord Brahma explained that his position and Lord Shiva's position are controlled by Lord Vishnu. So this is unique to the Gaudiya Vaishnava school, unique to the teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Everywhere else you go, you will find that Lord Vishnu is God, and he is the origin of everything, including Lord Krishna. So do not be puzzled if you're talking to somebody from India and he says, yes, well, of course, Krishna is the 10th incarnation of Vishnu. Before you smash his teeth or cut off his tongue, you should remember that this is a basic philosophy. The basic philosophy is Lord Vishnu is the personality of Godhead, is supreme, is Ananta, is Vasudev, is the origin of everything. And what we find in the Caitanya Caritamrita is subtle refinements, sort of a yes but to the original philosophy of Vaishnavism. So do not be surprised and do not be confused when you read books outside our own tradition that say that, well, Lord Vishnu is supreme and then Krishna, we have to factor in as Krishna as one of the incarnations. No. Just thought I'd put that out there to confuse you. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy is not simply from him. It's not something he made up, but we find in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Everything taught by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And Srimad Bhagavatam is known as a Mahapurana. To get to be a Purana, you have to have 5 subjects in the Purana. You have to have history, and you have to have origin of the universe. You have to have the family trees of the great kings. You have to have the relationship of the avatars with the devotees, like that. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we have 10 subjects, not just the 5 that would make it a Purana, but 10 subjects. And these 10 subjects include primary creation and secondary creation. In other words, the creation is important because one of the most important questions that children ask and adults still ask is, how did we get here? Where does it all come from? What's it for? And where are we going? If you answer these preliminary questions, you can start a religious movement. But if you want to start a religious movement, it's better that you get some authority. So authority is provided by a Purana. Puranas in themselves are not considered to be Shruti. They're considered to be Smriti, that which is heard, secondary category of scripture. And the Vedas and the end of the Vedas, called the Upanishads, are considered to be Shruti. In other words, when God comes, when God wants you to know how everything originates, he speaks Shruti. When he comes as an incarnation, or when the sages speak, that is Smriti. So, what should we do between the Shruti and the Smriti? There's going to be a fight. Fight. No, they're incongruents. It just so happens that God happens to speak a lot, and it's okay if he speaks the same thing later on. Though in 1947, there was a young shepherd boy, and he was looking after some goats in what we now call Israel. And they went, one of the goats got lost. And as you know from the parable of the lost sheep in the Bible, when a shepherd is looking after sheep or goats and one is missing, and shepherds have to be very good at counting sheep. Surprised they don't always fall asleep. Where was I? Let me count those sheep again. 1, 2, 3. It's terrible when you laugh at your own jokes, isn't it? There we go. Anyway, so one goat was missing. Anyway, he eventually tracked the bleating to a cave, and he went in the cave and he found some earthenware jars. And inside the earthenware jars were ancient scrolls. He thought that he could sell them for a few bob. So he went to his dad, and then his dad sold them on the market, and he got a few bob. These were the most precious pieces of archaeological history. They became known as the Dead Sea Scrolls, because that's where they were found. The Dead Sea Scrolls in 1947, they were hidden by the church. As soon as they discovered what was on them, they hid them. And no one was allowed to see them for at least 30 years, something like that. Why did they hide them? Because it proves that some of the stories told by Jesus Christ were in fact in existence before he told them. And what we thought was the unique revelation of Lord Jesus Christ was in fact his retelling of a story that was told hundreds of years before. Why should that worry the church? Because you're supposed to have your own original material. If you're the Son of God, you're supposed to say something which is original and has never been heard before, and it's a unique revelation. How do you get to be an incarnation of God? In the Vedic tradition, you say something that God has already said. You just repeat the same thing, maybe in a slightly different way to a slightly different group of people with a different form, either half a fish or half a lion. But you say the same thing. Why? Because Shruti is inviolable. Shruti is the same. It's eternal. That's what Veda means. It's the eternal wisdom, not just of mankind, but the eternal wisdom of the universe, not just the universe, but all universes. So it will always be the same. So similarly, we always say, don't we, when the Guru speaks, he's not using his own material, not like a comedian. If you go up on stage and you tell someone else's joke and you're trying to be a professional comedian and you get paid for telling that joke, like if our Billy Connolly gets up and he tells a story that was originally told by someone else. They go, hey, Billy, I heard that story in a comedy performance down the road. You're recycling someone else's material. Get off the stage. Every comedian has to come up with original material. But God, he recycles his own material. And the gurus, they recycle God's material. It's all recycling. We believe in recycling. So everything that is to be said has been said before. There's nothing new. So Prabhupada said that one time. He said, there's nothing new. I've said everything. It is already said. So when Prabhupada translated the Bhagavatam, he thought that he could give us the absolute, because the Bhagavatam is the, what is it? The Nigama Kalpataror Galitam Balam. Dharma Projita Kaitavo Nirmat Saranam Satam. It's the scripture that doesn't cheat you. The Srimad, I was going to put my hand on the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's not the Bhagavatam. The Srimad Bhagavatam will not cheat you. It will not send you to hell. It will not send you to the heavenly planets. It will not send you just to being a nice person, being integrated, being balanced. It will not make you cool. It will not give you a happy life that is devoid of God consciousness. The only thing that the Bhagavatam will do is to give you the Supreme Personality of Godhead in your life and awaken your relationship with that Godhead, which is the sum and substance of human life anyway. So the Bhagavatam will do that for you. And the Bhagavatam sets out its case in the very beginning. In the very beginning, we hear the story of Srila Vyasadeva, who was despondent. He'd compiled the Vedas. Now, a lot of the Vedas actually do tell you to go to heaven. It's all about raising you up. If there's one scripture that raises you up, it's the Vedas. Because Vedas is like a good doctor. Just like Raga, if you go to the doctors and you say, I've got a pain in my back, and the next person in the surgery comes and says, I've got a pain in the stomach, the doctor will write you an individual prescription. You won't get the same prescription as someone else. So you get a unique, individually tailored prescription for you. Although, it must be said, there's only really 12 prescriptions that the doctors write. It's either, I've got a pain, I've got this, I've got that, I've got the other, chest cough, whatever, 12, like there's 12 basic stories in any movie, there's 12 basic prescriptions in any doctor's surgery. We've all got the same diseases, folks. One of them's going to carry you off. And you get the last prescription. Sorry, the doctor says, we can't do anything for you. So the Vedas give prescriptions for everybody. Now, not everybody wants to go back to Godhead. Surprise, surprise. Some people just want to be happy here and die. Their ambitions are not very much. So, what do the Vedas say? Vedas say, all right, you can eat meat. It's okay. You don't have to be a vegetarian. But you have to kill the animal yourself. Okay? Only once a month. Not too often. Okay? You can kill the animal. But you have to go up on top of a hill at midnight and kill the animal. And before you kill the animal, you have to say in the animal's ear, Mamsha. Mamsha means, I'm killing you now. But in your next life, you can kill me. So the Vedas, that's a prescription. So you get to eat meat, but at the same time, you become aware of what's going to happen to you later on. So you have to be very bold to raise that knife a second time, don't you? See? So then you may want to go away and do some expiation, some way that you can become free from that offense. So then the Vedas give all sorts of prescriptions for doing good deeds that will balance out your bad deeds. You know, and hopefully at the end of your life, everything will be balanced. But you will still have to take birth again. If you do good deeds even, you'll have to take birth again. Why? Because Vedas say you have to enjoy. Oh, I don't want to enjoy. I want to go. No, sorry. You did some good deeds. You'll have to enjoy. It's going to be great. Most people, they want that. If you do believe in a next life, you want it to be a good life, don't you? You know, my next life, people want the next life in this life. You go to California and, you know, they want, I want a different chin. I want a different, you know, set of ears. And, you know, you could do something about these as well. And you can change the way I look. People want that. And sometimes they spend up to $60,000, $70,000 getting their face changed. We should tell them, we can do it for you. I'm not talking about Glasgow on a Friday night. Can your mother sew, Jim? So that's one way of getting under the surgeon's knife. But we can change your face into a beautiful face. We can make you beautiful. Come to the Hare Krishna body sculpture workshop. Chant this mantra from the Vedas and you'll be born beautiful. The only difficulty is you'll have to get old and die. But then when you're born again, you'll have a beautiful face. How about that? Some people are not born with a beautiful face, are they? They're born with, you've seen some babies, pretty ugly babies. You see some babies, a lot of babies are cute, right? Like Koa, he's cute. But some babies are just not cute. You look at them and you go, right, okay. You go, oh, he's gorgeous, isn't he? So we have these techniques. But the Vedas, Krishna says, are mainly to do with elevation. And the one word for those who worship the demigods in order to achieve elevation is, what is it called? Yes, Devanam Priya. Devanam Priya. Devanam Priya means loved by the demigods, but it's an insult. If you say a person, oh, you're Devanam Priya, like if you say to a person, oh, if you describe a person in South India, if you say, oh, he's ashram, you know what that means? It's like ashram means he's a useless man. He's only good for living in an ashram. Ashram. Very depreciated. He's ashram. So if you want to show that a person is just interested in being elevated to the heavenly planets, you say, oh, he's Devanam Priya. The demigods love him. Why do the demigods love him? Because he's always giving offerings to the demigods. Only interested in this world or a better life in the next. Some people, they're born with a silver spoon in their mouth, aren't they? They wake up, practically speaking, and they're born in a very rich family, and there's nothing goes wrong in their life. Some people, they wake up and they're covered in flies, and they get a mortal disease before the age of 5, and they pass away before the age of 7. So we do not have this theory, and I'm sorry if it disappoints you to hear this, we do not have this theory that all human beings are equal. They're not. Everyone is born in different circumstances because of the previous activities. That does not mean our response is to say, just see, poor people, get out of my sight. Demigod worshippers, get out of my sight. Ugly people, oh, don't look at me, please. No, a Vaishnava is compassionate. We know that the way people attract misfortune is through their karma. There is only activity, there is only karma that produces both good and bad. But the response to someone's misfortune is dharma. The response to someone's fortune is dharma. A devotee comes into inheritance. What do we say? Don't let it go to your head, Prabhu. Don't let it go to your head. Yeah. So, would it go to your head? I'm wondering. Let's just say 50 million. 50 million. Would it go to your head? Devaki? Yeah, pretty much. How big would your motorhome be? What would happen if you got 50 million? What would you do with it? Just off the top of your head. Would you fall away from Krishna consciousness? Would you think to yourself, right, all my prayers have been answered. Kodanitai, my poor Shashi, you've been very merciful. I knew that you were the most merciful. I didn't quite think it was in a cash, came with a cash bonus. Would you? You'd spend it all on the temple. Oh, for Krishna. You wouldn't give me any? If Krishna wanted you to have it. I think Krishna wanted you to have it because you've got it. It happened to one devotee. It happened to one devotee. I will mention no names, but he or she was looking after a very rich person. They died and left everything, absolutely everything. 50 million, something like that. So it does happen sometimes. Did he or she lose their head? No, they didn't. They didn't. They may go to the holy places first class, but they didn't go to the head. Anyway, the point is, it's very tempting. And Srila Prabhupada said at one time, he said, most of my disciples want to go to the heavenly planets. as I said yesterday, ISKCON is the big vacuum cleaner. We go all over the world. We hoover up anybody who's remotely interested in spiritual practice. So when we hoover everybody up, we get everything. We get people who are sahajas in their last life, people who are mayavadis in their last life, people who are elevationists, people who are very interested in the heavenly planets. Because our basic message to people is, there is another life after this one, and you reincarnate. Okay, and so people come and they say, oh, I've never heard this before. Let me join this movement. So they join us. And as time goes by, all those different desires, they pop out. Like whack-a-mole. All these different desires pop out. You've got to deal with them. That's why, unfortunately, we have a situation where people join ISKCON and then they want to recreate ISKCON, but in a different shape. They want to create their own movement. Don't do that. So, the Puranas say, Dharma parojita kaitavotra nirmatsaranam satam. Enough of that. We've had enough of that. You've done that in a previous life. Because Narada Muni came to Srila Vyasadeva and he said, enough of this. We've catered for all those people. But what you haven't done is fully describe the Supreme Personality of God, the beauty of Krishna and his activities. So that's the beginning. That's how this book got to be written. And he meditates and he sees everything as it is. And this Srimad Bhagavatam expands from Vyasadev's vision. And in that vision, he sees Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he sees the Vishnu expansions, and he sees Maya, Shakti, and he sees the living entities. He sees it all, he sees the entire thing. Then he begins writing. So that's what we have in the Srimad Bhagavatam. What we have in the Caitanya Caritamrita is Lord Chaitanya's explanation of all of this. So when Lord Chaitanya was traveling in the south of India, he was very delighted to come upon the temple of Adi Keshava. It's a reclining Lord Vishnu. If you've never been there, make it one of the destinations you go to on your time on this earth. You should go there. It is a wonderful place. It's not crowded. It's not touristy. There are no beggars. It's clean. It's beautiful. And it's ancient. It's in a village called Tiruvattar. It's in Kerala. It's not too far from Kanyakumari, which is the tip of the triangle of India. You can go right to the Land's End of India. See all the newly married couples taking their picture by the ocean, buy some seashells, and then take a hookah right as you go north up to Kerala. So Tiruvattar, beautiful. And there you will see a 30-foot long black deity of Lord Vishnu lying on an Anandashesh. Absolutely gorgeous. And you'll be able to stand in the spot where every morning Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chanted the Brahma Samhita. Brahma Samhita, the 5th chapter of which he found and copied and brought back to the Gaudiya Vaishnava community, which was growing at that time. He also found later on a work by someone called Bilvamangal Thakur, which was called the Krishna Karna Amrita. Karna means ear, Amrita means nectar. So it's the stories of Krishna which are nectar to the ear. So he brought this also back to Jagannath Puri when he came home. So these two books are said to be corollary scriptures to the Srimad Bhagavatam. So Prabhupada at one time said, everything is in the Brahma Samhita. The entire Vaishnava philosophy is in the Brahma Samhita. Usually when you do Brahma Samhita, when you're doing Vaishnava philosophy, you begin with what is known as Tattva Traya. Tattva means truth, Traya means three. And it means the relationship between the three. The three meaning the jiva, or the soul, God, the ultimate origin of everything, and matter. So matter is unconscious, jivas are conscious, they both come from the same place. We are conscious, the body is unconscious, everything comes from the same place. So what is the relationship? What is the relationship to that source of everything? How did we come from that source? And why are we in Maya? Why do we suffer? This is the question for all, the beginning of all philosophy. Why am I suffering? And if I'm not suffering now, then how will it be at the end? Prabhupada said, if you realize this, you will stop suffering. If you understand philosophy perfectly, you'll stop suffering. Like Alexander the Great. Prabhupada said, Alexander the Great, he was a great king, but he had a guru. His guru was Diogenes, or as they say in Greece, Diogenes. And Diogenes, Prabhupada said, he was self-realized. He was Greek, wasn't from India, but he was self-realized. How do I know? Because Prabhupada said Diogenes was Atmarama, self-satisfied. So this kind of broadens the scope, doesn't it? So what happens? Alexander the Great comes to Diogenes and he says, right, I've conquered everything, everywhere. I've finished my conquering. I'd like to do something for you because you're my teacher. You've taught me everything I know. What can I do for you? He says, Diogenes lived in a big wine barrel outside Athens. He lived with 3 or 4 dogs, little puppies, cute. He used to feed them. Anyway, everybody knew he was a wise man, but he didn't want anything. Just wore a little, gamcha. Didn't want anything. Just lived in the barrel, big barrel, big old barrel. So Alexander the Great comes and he says, what can I do for you? I've got palaces and I've got horses and I've got beautiful women and I've got gold and silver and rubies and diamonds. What can I give you? He said, I don't want anything of that. He said, you should know by now that I'm just satisfied, just being me, just being here. He said, but look, I'm your student. You're my teacher. I must do something for you. What can I do for you? He said, all right, there's one thing you can do for me. He said, yes, what is it? Can you get out of the sun? Just stand over there. I need the sun. So Prabhupada liked that story. Later, when Alexander the Great was dying, he called his ministers and he said, I want you to do a few things for me. He said, right, take a pen, take a dictation. He said, when I'm on my way to my funeral, I want you to line the route with gold. Okay. He said, all the gold coins, I want you to line the route. People walk on that. He said, I want you to put my hands, not like this, my dead body, not like this, but like this. Okay, write it down. He said, I want my body to be carried by 6 doctors. 6 doctors, okay. He said, my Lord, we will do anything you ask because you're Alexander the Great, but could you tell us why you want these things? He said, well, I want the gold on the road to show that everything I've conquered and everything I've achieved is now being walked on. I want my hands like this to show my hands are empty, that although I've conquered everything, I came into this world as a baby with nothing, and I'm leaving it with nothing. Okay. And why do you want 6 doctors? I want the 6 doctors because I want to show that not one doctor could save me. When my time was up, my time was up. In this way, I want my last act to be an act of teaching. Before that, of course, he'd got to the borders of India and he tried to defeat powerful Indian armies. Okay. Indians like to tell this story. They were later on defeated by the Mughals, of course. But he got to India and he couldn't defeat them. And he said, what is the source of the great power of the Indian armies? Please tell me. He said, and they sent him a Bhagavad Gita, Ganga Jal, Shalagram Shila, and Tulsi Patra. He said, these 4 things are the secret strength of the Indian culture. Secret strength. Anyway, where was I? We were talking about Bhagavad Purana. So, yes, Tattvatraya. So, if you know the relationship between these three things, so every school of philosophy is based on understanding the relationship between those three things and how the jiva comes under the forces of illusion. If you think that the jiva does not exist, but illusion itself has created the idea of the jiva, then you're a Mayavadi. If you understand that the jiva is an independent entity which comes from a supreme source, has a relationship to it, but is not it, then you're a dualist. So it's very interesting that Srimad Bhagavatam is very, anyway, that's a detail. But when you know the relationship, then you can begin to recover the relationship. So everything that Lord Chaitanya teaches is from the Bhagavad Purana, and also we find the entire philosophy in the Brahma Samhita. So Srila Prabhupada says that the Lord Vishnu, with his 4 arms, is as Krishna in his work clothing. He said, when a man wants to go to work, he puts on a suit. He may wear a tie. He looks different. He's the same person, but he looks different. So when Krishna, who's just playing, he's just a boy. But when he wants to do some work, like creating the universe, then he puts on a suit. And the suit has 2 extra arms. Only Prabhupada can make statements like that. So the idea that, but we do not have any opposition to Lord Vishnu. At different times, I hear very young devotees, they say things like, well, that's just Vishnu, or that's only Vishnu, or that's only Lakshmi, as if to say, I've understood the entire universe. I will now insult each and every one of Krishna's expansions. Don't do that. There's no competition. We're not competing. So we take this example, which I believe comes from the Vishnu Purana, of the candle, one candle, lighting all other candles. We take this. Dipachi eva di dashandaramapi pedya. Okay? Should we have a question or should we just carry on reading? Question? Yes, bright student with full-bodied tilak and lots of hair, even though he lives in the ashram. There's a slight insult there intended. You didn't take it, but you're okay. Yeah.
Actually, I have 2 questions, Prabhu.
You have how many? 4 questions. The first one comes free. The third one, you have to shave your head if you want.
You were explaining that all the reincarnations have been just repeating the truth, repeating what previous incarnations have said and giving the same thing.
Yeah.
But senior devotees sometimes explain what Mahaprabhu is giving us is Krishna Prem, it's different than the rest.
Yes.
How do we see that or understand that?
In one sense, yes, but consider that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is only giving Srimad Bhagavatam. So in that sense, it is what has been revealed 4,500 years before him. So in that sense, it's not different. He's preserving that. But also, if you look, everywhere you will find the Lord is personal. In the Vedas, we find, even in the Rig Veda, we find Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam Sada Pashanti Surayo Deviva Chakshuratatam Tad Vipraso Vipanyavo Jagravangsa Saminda De Vishnu Yat Paramam Padam. We'll find. And in the commentaries, we find that that verse means that the great sages look and they see that Vishnu is in the highest abode, Paramam Padam. Then in what is it? I forget the reference, but we find that also in the Shruti we find that Vishnu is the highest, Agni is the lowest, and everyone else is in between. There's a verse like that. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us this. You see, even though we specify Krishna, when we say Krishna, we don't mean just Krishna the cowherd boy, we mean Krishna and all of his manifestations. It's like saying, I have a motorhome parked at Purna Bhavan. When you say motorhome, do you mean just the motorhome? Just the concept of motorhome? No, I mean motorhome, 4 wheels, an engine, 2 doors, 3 doors, 4 doors, windows. You don't go through the whole thing. So when we say Krishna, we don't just mean a boy playing a flute. We mean Krishna and everything that is Krishna. Everything. Everything is contained within Krishna. So it's not like, well, you said you had a motorhome, but you didn't say you had 4 wheels. So I took those wheels. So I'm not really stealing because you didn't tell me that they were your wheels on your motorhome. Do you understand the logic? See the logic? As when we say Krishna, we're not just talking about the personality of Krishna, we're talking about Krishna and everything that Krishna is. And therefore the Srimad Bhagavatam begins with Prabhupada's preface that says, Krishna is the summum bonum. Summum bonum is a Latin word which means everything that there is. Do you understand this sort of subtle point? Sometimes we want to differentiate between Krishna, like in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Prabhupada says, Krishna is Radha and Radha is Krishna. Sorry, what? You can read it. It's very esoteric, but you fall asleep and you miss it. So everything is Krishna. You see? So for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu too. So when someone says, Nrsingadev is, if I say to you, Nrsingadev is the source of the universes, Nrsingadev is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Like many times in the translations you'll find one of the incarnations of the Lord being described as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? Prahlad Maharaj. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Nrsingadev. Now, if you're a pedant, you'll go, hang on a minute. Lord Nrsingadev is not the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why did Prabhupada say that? Because he's including Lord Nrsingadev as part of Krishna. Is that okay? You can hang on to those other 3 questions. If you want to hang on to your hair, hang on to those questions. Should we go on a little bit more? You have a question? Yeah.
When I was a younger devotee, we always had a progression on how we studied the Vedic literature, the literature that Srila Prabhupada was giving us.
Yeah.
And generally, we didn't read Srimad Caitanya Caritamrita, so we've gone through Srimad Bhagavatam once or twice.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Is that recommended or not proper?
Well, it makes sense to do it that way. When I first became a devotee, there was no Chaitanya Caritamrita. There was no Chaitanya Caritamrita. So there was not even any question of reading it. That came along, the first book came along in 1975 with 1 volume, and no one really had access to anything else for, say, into 1976. So 1976 we had access to the Chaitanya Caritamrita. It makes sense to read the Bhagavatam first. Yeah. Again, when I was a young devotee, there was only 2 cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam had been published. So, if you'd finished that, then what do you do? But the teachings of Lord Chaitanya were there. So the essence of the Chaitanya Caritamrita was presented in the TLC, which, after the publication of Caitanya Caritamrita, has sort of suffered a bit of a dive in publication and in reading. It is one of Prabhupada's standard books that he wants everyone to read. You know, it's got the essence of the CC in there. And I think it should be published again and everybody should read it, but what do I know? And the reason why it makes sense to read CC after Srimad Bhagavatam is because there's constant references to it. But I know people who have read CC first. But there are some parts of the CC, especially the Antya Lila, that before you get to the Antya Lila, you should definitely read Srimad Bhagavatam. There's some parts in the Antya Lila which the Gaudiya Math, when they're going through the CC as a daily class, they won't even read them. It's too high. So they don't read that section. So,
Yes, could you just clarify a point, please? You're saying that matter is not conscious, but we hear that Kshivadata say Vishnu is within every atom. So would that mean that consciousness is within every material substance, or is not? Could you clarify this?
sure. He's there. He's conscious. But that matter is not conscious. There's a difference between the Shaktiman and the Shakti. The Shaktiman is the source of Shakti, which is energy. So everything is operated under the... It's not just that God creates and leaves everything. God is under the... Everything is under the control of God. So those jivas which are meant to be conscious, they're conscious. And those jivas which are in stone, for instance, are switched off because their consciousness is limited by the body in which they are placed. So in that way, everything is operating under the control of the Supreme Lord. But he is everywhere. That's why his name is Vishnu. Vish means that which is situated everywhere, that which pervades everything. Comes from a Sanskrit root, and that root means that which pervades everything. So Vish also means poison, because Vish is that which permeates everything. Sanskrit has 2,000 root words, and from the root words you make a bigger word. Just like when we say Govinda, Govinda. I always wondered, why does go mean the senses, cows, and land? How does that work out? I thought Sanskrit was a precise language, but the word go means that which is pulled, that which is led. So go means land because it's pulled by the plow. Go means cow because it's pulled by a rope. And the senses also go because they're pulled in different directions. So go means all three words. That's the root word. Just a little piece of Sanskrit trivia for you, but it may help you at some point.
So what does go mean in Govind?
Or what does it mean? It means all of it, doesn't it? Govinda, I'd bet on the cow reference in that one. Herder of the cows. Is that okay? Is that okay? Yeah. It's like there's many jivas in your body, right? Many jivas, millions of jivas in your body. But only one is the predominant jiva. The predominant jiva is the one that has that life of Alan. There's only one jiva that has that. But in your body there's many, many millions of jivas. Jivas are everywhere. But they're not conscious. They're conscious only if you have a body, and then the jiva's limitations is limited by the body that it's in. And with poison in your body, you become limited. Just like I went for an operation recently, and I said to the anesthetist who was putting me under general anesthetic, I said, "Shall I count up to 10? And she laughed. She said, "Well, you can try." He said, "Well, why don't you have a go if you think you can?" Yeah. I said, "Okay, 1, 2. So then the jiva's consciousness is limited by the change in the environment which it's in, which we call an anesthetic. Your consciousness is switched off. You don't be good. But the same thing happens at night, doesn't it? You know, you're unconscious. It's not a very good deal, actually. We talk about I'm a conscious human being, but every day, every single day, you got to be unconscious for hours and hours and hours. The human body is not a very good deal. We can't even stay awake. Devaki, you were saying something. Somebody else had their hand up. There was another hand. Okay.
One more thing to clarify.
Yeah.
We were having a class here recently, and there was some confusion about the hierarchy of the different expansions. And so, some time ago, we were given some material from a devotee that put these things in a sort of chart form.
Okay.
And it stated that Narayan had more potency than Vishnu. And I was just wondering, do you know anything about this? And can you clarify?
Sometimes you get different material, as you describe it, which may lay stress on different aspects. My understanding is that the name Narayan, the name Vishnu, the name Vasudev, Vishnu, Narayan, Vasudev. No. Vishnu, Narayan, Vasudev. They all mean the same thing. And you can trace that back to the history of where we find the first occurrence. So you find for instance, we know that Srimad Bhagavatam comes after the Vedas because the Srimad Bhagavatam says so. The Srimad Bhagavatam is Srila Vyasadev's mature meditation. It's his complete meditation. So then, where does the name Narayan come from? At some stage, you will have to prove that Narayan and Vishnu and the different positionings. But the epithets for the same person. But you can say, you can say, for instance, if you look at that painting over there in the corner, you can say Mahavishnu. You can say Mahavishnu is created by Krishna, and then Mahavishnu expands into Garbhodakshay Vishnu inside every universe. Garbhodakshay Vishnu expands into Kshirodakshay Vishnu, and then Kshirodakshay Vishnu expands into the Paramatma, which accompanies the jiva. So if you wanted to, you could make a hierarchy like that. But it's sort of like, yeah, it's interesting, but it's interesting if that's what you know. But what I wanted to do today was sort of to zoom out and create a wholeness, because often we try to dissect. As philosophers trying to learn this stuff, we dissect and we compare and contrast and make everything into a hierarchy. That's fine, that's fair, but it's sort of like saying, well, which is the most beautiful? Is it the, petal number 6 on the flower? Is it petal number 10 on the flower? Is it the stem of the flower? Is it the fragrance? What's the most beautiful? Well, as soon as you analyze any of those parts and you separate them from the whole, you don't have the flower anymore. You've dissected it out of existence. It's like the old adage of you take a butterfly, a beautiful butterfly, you take it and you pin it to a board. You stick a pin through its heart and you pin it to a board. Okay. In your attempt to analyze the butterfly, you've killed the butterfly. So there's no more concept of butterfly available to you to analyze, because by your By your analysis, you've killed it. So if you overanalyze, you may lose Krishna. But for philosophy and for discussing our conclusions with reference to other conclusions, then we do that. We zoom in. But for understanding Krishna, the greatness of Krishna, we can sometimes zoom out as well. So zoom out gives us the big picture. Zoom in gives us the sort of the parts and how they relate to everything. That was deep, wasn't it? Did that make sense? Did it make sense? Okay. Do we stop here or do we go on? What's Sunday? Ladies, any questions? Leela Manjari, I'm sure you must be overburdened with hundreds of questions, philosophical points. Not today. You want to add something, Devaki?
Just to ask a question. There's two things. How do you deal with Mayavadis? How do you argue against that? And another one, free will. How do Vaishnavas regard free will?
Ooh.
The relationship with Paramatma.
Two interesting questions, yeah. Well, Ramanujacharya, who was the first to really have a go with the Mayavadis. See, ancient culture is all about debating. It's all about debating. And you debate another school of philosophy. And that's something that you love to do as a Brahmin. You know, Brahmins love, they love getting up early. They love reciting mantras. They love study. They love water. And they love debate. So one Brahmin will sit down with another Brahmin and he'll go, so, what should we debate today? Another Brahmin will come up with a point and he'll say, I contest that point. I contest that point because in this scripture it says this, and the scripture says that. We find that throughout Prabhupada's books, of course. So Prabhupada is our Brahmin. And he's saying, he's giving different analogies, but he's also giving Shastric quotations. There's two things Prabhupada gives. Well, he probably gives many things. But he will say something like, just like there's the flower and the fragrance of the flower. Well, he's made an analogy. But just because he's used an analogy, that's not proof. An analogy is not proof. Proof is if you go right back to the Shastra. And for most schools of philosophy, there's only 3 books that you can argue from. And that was set as a tradition around about the year 800 by Shankaracharya himself, who loved debates, and he loved winning debates. So he said, look, if I'm going to debate you, I'm only going to allow you to quote from 3 scriptures. Bhagavad Gita, the Vedanta, meaning the Upanishads, and Vedanta Sutra, which is Srila Vyasadev's compilation of Upanishad verses. Upanishad is Veda. When we say Upanishads, these are just the end of the Veda. So the Vedas are all about fire yagyas and going to heaven. And then the corollary scriptures are about Ayurveda, medicine, and different architecture and warfare. But then at the end of the Vedas is the Veda Anta. Veda means knowledge, Anta means the end. So Vedanta means the Upanishads. And the Upanishads are philosophy, not ritual. So the philosophy is there. So he said, you quote from that. You can quote from the Vedas, I keep saying Ishopanishad, which is our Upanishad. The Upanishads, Vedas, Vedanta, and Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita. So anyway, he says that, so this is our debating tendency. So for debates, scholars will debate on the meaning of a word, one word from the Vedas, and they will attack it from different sides, the grammar, the declension. They'll split it in different ways, and they'll try to prove their perspective of the universe on how these three things, God, matter, and souls, relate, from their point of view. And each school of philosophy has a slightly different perspective. So it's in their interest to expand the fortune of their school of philosophy by saying, I challenge you to a debate. So in a debate, it gets right down to the why, the one syllable. Sometimes they debate on one syllable for days. I mean, it's something we can't do because we don't know Sanskrit, but debate, what does that mean? What does that mean? You see, what does it mean? What does it really mean? So Ramanujacharya, he gave battle. He was a knight in shining armor in the medieval debate schools. And so he comes up with 7 proofs that impersonalism is incorrect, that it's a weak argument.
That's incorrect.
Incorrect. That Mayavad is incorrect. Yeah. And these are called the 7 untenables. He said, your philosophy doesn't hold because of these 7 things, 7 reasons. And he lists them. And we use some of them in our philosophy. If Brahman is everything and unchangeable, then how does it become changed? How is the jiva created? How is Brahman sliced? In other words, if spirit is a pizza, and you say that the jiva soul is a slice of pizza, let's say, just trying to keep it, then what's the knife? What's the pizza cutter? Okay, you have to say that, because people say, well, in the beginning there was God, and then God divided himself into millions and trillions of souls, each of whom is now trying to find himself by self-realization. But when you get to the end of your self-realization, you will understand that you are God. You'll be back where you came from. So Ramanuja says, yes, but if one jiva soul becomes self-realized, then all of them must become, because that jiva has realized, oh, now I am God. See? And really there is no jiva. Even the jiva itself is an illusion. See? It's just God imagining himself to be a jiva. You understand? So they say God has somehow fallen under the influence of something called Maya. And then God has become, under the illusion that he's actually Scottish and living in Scotland and suffering. So how is that possible? So he goes through these different things. 7 untenables. I have them in my little book here. So then we take some of those and we use them. But part of that is to get down into very small details of argumentation, which is great fun sometimes. But then you have to zoom away from that and just get on with the business of being a Vaishnava. But in the sense that everyone is Mayavad, means that God has changed. Our statement is that God always stays the same. Their statement is that God is changed. So there's Vivartavad and Parinamavad, 2 different philosophies. Anyway, it's that time of day. The point is that, and what was the other one? Free will. That's a big question, isn't it? Yes. How much have you got free will? Yeah. Prabhupada always used the example that when you get on a plane, you get on a plane because of free will, but once you're on the plane, your free will is limited, very limited. You have free will to be in this world, but most of your decisions are chosen for you. So it's just like when you have a wife, Devaki. You know what it's like. We have our wives. We have freedom to choose a wife, but once you choose the wife, your consciousness is very much rooted in what they want to do. Okay. Same as when you choose a husband, Devaki. You get the whole package. All right, that's good. We did something today. Thank you very much. I may not be here tomorrow. or I may not give class tomorrow. So if I don't, then it's been wonderful being here, being with you. It's refreshed me. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Praise Kripomoya Prabhu ki
Jai.